Good evening and welcome to Arizona Illustrated for Monday, the 4th day of June 2012. Many Americans continue to be very concerned about the economy, especially when they hear about financial difficulties in Europe and other important international markets. Here in southern Arizona, however, Mexico is the dominant player, and local leaders are getting ready for a major trade expo to provide information about working with this pivotal neighbor. Joining us is Jim Kulish, the president and CEO of the Alliance of Construction Trades. With him is Felipe Garcia. He is the Vice President of Community Affairs and Mexico Marketing for the Metropolitan Tucson Convention and Visitors Bureau. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Tony.
Jim, if I could begin with you, what is the Alliance of Construction Trades all about?
Well, we're 27 years in town. We're a nonprofit, and we're the actual companies that do the building, both commercial and residential. And we have about 300 members. And this show is really key to our members. It's also key to the general public to attend to, because everyone needs construction services, no matter if you're remodeling or if you are looking for a plumber just to come or for a masonry contractor. Same with businesses. Businesses are constantly looking to change, remodel, painting, whatever it takes. And so at this show at ASBISCon, we have all material suppliers, specialty contractors, manufacturers, and especially when we come into manufacturing and our material suppliers, so many of them already do business in Mexico that this is where Felipe came in and said, let's really promote this heavily. And we have, and we're looking for a good turnout this Friday and Saturday at the beautiful, if they haven't, your audience hasn't been out there, it's absolutely gorgeous at the new Casino del Sol Resort and the hotel.
All right, Felipe, so let's go ahead and talk about Mexico and the role that it plays for people here in Arizona. We were just talking about the economy, and apparently they're doing really well down there south of the border?
Their economy, Tony, has been doing better than we have. Now, the challenge we face as a community is that there's opportunities in Mexico. What are we doing here in Tucson? And I want to commend Jim Coolidge, because Jim, when he started putting this program together, he said, well, our market doesn't end in Nogales at the border. Our market's also south. We have opportunities for our businesses, and especially their economy, it's stronger. If there's more construction going on, how can we get those companies from Mexico supply, subcontract with companies here from southern Arizona? The market in Mexico right now is being visited by Europeans. There's Rolls-Royce from the UK that it's opening an office in Guaymas. The aerospace industry, construction. We need to be not just watching what's happening down there, we have to be active.
And Jim, the event is going to be held this Friday and Saturday. It's called ASBISCon.
ASBISCon.
Who do you hope to target? Who's invited?
Well, really, the general public's invited. In fact, we are charging admission $7. A portion will go to the food bank and the diaper bank in town. And we're offering free seminars. And the seminars really tie into everybody. It's locally, it's how to pick the right contractor. Who do you trust to come into your house? And also how to do business in Mexico by the U.S. Commerce Department. We're doing them both Friday and Saturday. And for business companies, we have technology seminars, for the latest software, hardware to help them in their business. So we really look to, hopefully, the event will grow. And next year with our Mexico partners, that we look to even invite Mexico manufacturers, distributors who want to do business here. So.
And Felipe, this is obviously a very different aspect from what people normally hear about Mexico, especially given the violence and the other problems that country is facing. How do you mesh both of those different scenarios?
And that's a message we want to give to the public more and more. The benefits about Mexico market. Every year, $1 billion being spent by Mexico nationals here in Pima County in Tucson. The export opportunities we have. The largest employer in the state of Sonora, 12,000 employees, is based out of Tucson. It's a local Tucson company, the offshore group, owned by people from Mexico. There's great opportunities, and at the Tucson Convention and Visitors Bureau, we're trying for people not only to see the tourism component, the business component of the opportunities. And the president of the National Chamber of Construction Industry, their Sonora chapter, will be attending the conference. We'll have a table at the events. They want to work more with Arizona, work more with Tucson.
But for those people who say, "Oh my goodness, I'm scared because I hear so much negativity coming out of Mexico,"
there's great opportunities south of the border. I've been down there. I go there every 2 to 3 weeks. The Tucson has an office in Hermosillo. Now we have a second office in Ciudad Obregón. And as anywhere in the world, if you're smart, don't leave your common sense back home, you'll be okay. And especially, again, there's great opportunities for businesses in Mexico, and there's organizations like ours, like Jim's, that will help you enter that Mexico market.
All right, Jim, we got about 30 seconds. What do you want to say?
Just one interesting thing. The day after I met Felipe, I had a membership meeting, and I happened to ask one of my equipment suppliers, "Have you done any business in Mexico?" And he smiled. He said, "Well, tomorrow I'm going down and pick up an $8 million check." So yes, there's great opportunities there, and we're so happy to partner with the Tucson-Mexico Trade Coalition and the Convention Bureau and Felipe.
Okay, well, great. Good luck for you to you this Friday and Saturday, the AsBizCon at Casino del Sol Hotel right here in Tucson. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Tony.
The sluggish U.S. economy continues in many different sectors around the country, and nonprofit organizations are facing a double whammy. Many are being forced to deal with a decline in revenues coupled with an increasing demand for services. Next, Arizona Public Media's Michael Chihak explores the situation with an official from the United Way of Tucson.
Are you seeing signs of recovery from the economic rough times among Southern Arizona nonprofits?
Well, there are some bright spots in the landscape, but there's the bright spots are on the funding side. We're starting to see some relief from the revenue decreases that we've been seeing over the last couple of years. However, the need is still great. We continue to see increases in requests for services from nonprofits.
So the human services side of nonprofits is part of our social safety net in our society. What kind of shape is that safety net in right now?
It's not in good shape yet. The safety net is funded by a variety of sources, both from government, from foundations, and from individual donations. And those sources of funding have been decreasing over the last several years. So we're along with the economic downturn we've all experienced, we're starting to see some leveling off, and we're playing a giant game of catch-up in order to be able to help the increasing numbers of people who have been affected by the economic downturn.
The United Way is one of the bigger nonprofits in the community, bringing in a lot of revenue and dispersing a lot of revenue for social service agencies and others. What kind of outreach are you doing to help the member agencies and perhaps any nonprofits to be more successful and to stabilize?
Well, there's an interesting new effort underway, a collaborative effort, and it's just getting underway as we speak. It's called the Tucson Nonprofit Loan Fund, and it's a collaborative effort of the Diamond Foundation, the Community Foundation for Southern Arizona, United Way, and others in the community. And the idea is to establish a loan fund where we can offer affordable market rate loans to nonprofits for operating expenses. So that should be up and running within the next few weeks.
And what kind of loans could nonprofits get from that in terms of dollar size?
Well, the details are still being worked out, but there are criteria that a nonprofit has to meet in terms of its own size, and the loans would be between $10,000 and $50,000 is what's being projected right now. So in addition to that new fund coming on board, not only United Way, but the Lodestar Center out of ASU and United Ways statewide offer workshops for nonprofits on how to streamline their operations, offer technical assistance in grant writing, and ways to increase their own fundraising efforts.
And how is the United Way itself doing with revenues and able to meet its obligations in the last few years?
Well, we're happy to report that with our new leadership over the last several years, we've really shored up our own financial position. We've gotten our financial house in order and streamlined our operations, reduced our expenses, and as a result of all those efforts, we recently earned a 4-star award from Charity Navigator, which is an organization that looks at financial situations of nonprofits, and that's the highest award that they offer.
Are you seeing any big changes in the way the United Way operates or the way other nonprofits operate in the community as a result of the economic difficulties we've experienced?
Well, one thing we've always done at United Way is to promote collaborations, collaborative efforts among our partner agencies. And now more and more, you see more of that taking hold and making some success in ways that it hadn't done in the past. So we have collaborative efforts around education, early childhood education, in the realm of income tax preparation. Many people are familiar with the VITA program, which is a large collaborative community effort. And in the world of elder services, with the help of the Community Foundation, we have a new collaborative effort called the Elder Initiative that brings together partner agencies to work together to share our resources, our knowledge, our expertise to make a larger community impact.
And beyond consolidation, beyond collaborations, there are consolidations going on. One of the more successful ones here in Tucson was the collection of literacy groups that came together. And you were telling me that there's another one about to come about.
That's right. Our Family Services and New Beginnings for Women and Children are right now undergoing a merger. And those organizations both focus on homelessness services and homelessness prevention, and they just saw now as the time to bring their operations together to make a bigger impact in the community.
And that'll be completed within the next few weeks, you say?
I believe by the end of June that will be completed.
And we have just about a half a minute remaining. In that time, tell me a quick good news story going on in the nonprofit community.
Well, the good news story is that our nonprofits are learning very well how to do more with less. That Lutheran Social Services, for example, is one of our partners, and although they have needed to lay off some case managers because of funding issues, they've trained their case managers to be able to do applications for their clients to access needed services. So they're able to service their clients in a more holistic way, even though they are doing that with less resources.
Kathy Wilson of United Way of Tucson in Southern Arizona, thanks so much for coming in to speak with me.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Music legend Petula Clark hosts an all-star reunion from the bands that made the British beat.
Wow thing. We walked together hand in hand. And I know that if you love me too.
Monday at 8 on PBS HD, Arizona Public Media.
Thousands of people in southern Arizona are expected to pay close attention to the sun tomorrow afternoon as they try to get a glimpse of a unique opportunity known as the transit of Venus. This event comes on the heels of a solar eclipse last month that also excited many local residents. Mark McLemore has an interview about tomorrow's event involving planet Venus and the sun.
And joining me now from the Mt Lemmon SkyCenter, we have Adam Block. He's the program coordinator there, and he's going to tell us more about the transit of Venus. Now, we have heavenly bodies whizzing through our skies of different kinds and size and shapes all the time. Why is this significant?
This is significant because I think of its rarity and its historical significance. The transit of Venus is kind of a subtle affair. When you looked at the partial solar eclipse that we had a couple of weeks ago, that's dramatic. We got to see the sun be eclipsed by the moon, our life-giving star. With Venus, when we look at this particular event, we're going to see what is effectively a very small black dot go across the countenance of the sun. And you can see that with your unaided eyes, though it's small, safely with one of these solar filters. You put this up to your eye, and you'll be able to see it, or through the use of a solar telescope. Now, not everyone has one of those, so at the SkyCenter, we're going to be providing live streaming video of the event. It begins at a little bit after 3 p.m., though we'll start our coverage at about 2 o'clock. So you'll want to visit the SkyCenter's website. But again, it's the rarity of the event that really should strike people as something special. This transit of Venus won't happen again for another 100+ years. So unless medical science improves and the longevity of human life is greatly increased, this is your last opportunity. You really want to get a chance to see this. And the other thing is the historical significance. Again, this is subtle, to be able to see this black dot go across the face of the sun like maybe a dark little beauty mark or something. I think you need to take into a context to appreciate not only that rarity, but also the historical significance. Back in the late 1600s and 1700s, during the Renaissance, people wanted to measure the universe. They wanted to categorize everything around them. And one of the things that was not known at the time was the distance between the Earth and the sun. And that was something that wanted to be measured. So clever astronomers like Edmund Halley proposed that if you were to go to different places in the world and look at the transit of Venus, you would be able to see the shift in Venus across the face of the sun just because you're in different positions on the Earth due to parallax. And from that, infer not only the distance to Venus, but then the distance from the Earth to the sun, and ultimately use that to gauge the size of the universe. So this was something that he implored people. He wouldn't be able to see it himself. He died before the actual event happened. But he said, you guys have to go do this. And people did. They sailed around the world, risked their lives to see this little black dot go across the sun. Even Benjamin Franklin, in the year 1769, stopped what he was doing. He was a busy guy to see the transit of Venus. So this is an event that I think everyone should go out for. I say make Halley happy and check this out on June 5th, a little bit after 3 p.m.
Now, the technique of seeing a planet pass in front of a star is still useful in identifying extrasolar planets, planets that are outside of our solar system.
That's right. And I think that brings more of a contemporary note to this idea, where astronomers, when they observe other stars far away, there are planets that transit, that go in front of them. And if you want to know what that looks like, well, we're going to have a chance tomorrow to see exactly what that looks like up close. In fact, there's an experiment that will be taking place, the Hubble Space Telescope. They're not going to look at the sun because that'll fry all the equipment, but instead they'll look at the moon during the transit of Venus and measure the dip in the reflected sunlight coming off of the moon to see if they can infer the presence of Venus. I think they will, but it gives a very good way to approximate what's happening with these other stars, and you can measure that.
And you said there was a special moment near the beginning of this process that you're personally looking forward to witnessing.
Yeah, this is something that I haven't obviously seen. I'm very enthusiastic about astronomy, and I'm looking forward to sharing this with the public. We have a program taking place at the Mt Lemmon SkyCenter. One of the things that should happen as Venus just begins to come into the edge of the sun will be that sunlight will filter through the outer atmosphere of Venus, and maybe we'll see the outer atmosphere light up like a ring. And that's a beautiful thing to see, another planet somehow being illuminated from behind by the sun.
Well, quickly recap for us how the public can enjoy and witness this event safely.
Safely, you would want to use one of these solar filters.
Which you can get where?
Which you can get, for example, at Flandreau at the University of Arizona. Otherwise, I would suggest there are many sites you can log on to see the live streaming feed, and the Mt Lemmon SkyCenter at skycenter.arizona.edu is one of those places. So join us there to see the transit of Venus.
Well, thanks so much for sharing your enthusiasm and your expertise on this subject with us, Adam. It was fun to talk about it.
Thanks, Mark.
Political ads on television and elsewhere are typically turning more aggressive and divisive, but voters claim they want something different. Political reporter Christopher Conover has that interview with two members of the National Institute for Civil Discourse.
Joining us now in the studio, Tony Massaro and Robin Stryker, both with the National Institute for Civil Discourse. Thank you so much for coming in. The two of you have put together a lengthy report on civil discourse and what it means in this election season, which is now fully underway. Robin, if I could ask you first, can you give us kind of a thumbnail of what this 67-page paper says?
Well, it starts out by noting that about 8 in 10 Americans think that uncivil political discourse is a real problem, and 82% say that they tune out from advertising just because they find it too mean-spirited and nasty. What we try to do in the article is first to make clear that we are fully in favor of vigorous public debate across political and ideological lines. It should be passionate and full-throated. What we have found is a negative for democracy is extreme political incivility, by which we mean things like ad hominem attacks, name-calling, shutting down one's opponents instead of listening and engaging, false, deceptive advertising, vitriolic personal attacks, and the like.
Tony, let me ask you, you being the First Amendment expert, somebody's going to listen and say civility, oh, we're shutting down free speech. That's not what you're doing, is my guess, based on the fact that you're sitting here.
On the contrary, first of all, we are emphatically opposed to government regulation of this type of political discourse, 100% against it. Encouraging the marketplace of ideas is a core First Amendment value. We believe that political discourse that advances the marketplace of ideas is completely consistent with First Amendment norms. And so I think that what we're doing is evidencing real fidelity to First Amendment values as well as First Amendment law.
You both in the paper talk about, and Robin, you mentioned that a large portion of Americans don't like the negative speech. Yet in the last couple of election cycles, we see increasing turnout, at least in Arizona, and we certainly have heard plenty of negative speech over the last couple of election cycles. How do those two things jive?
Well, that's a really excellent question because it turns out that it's not negative speech per se. Negative, I mean, after all, drawing attention to the difference between oneself and one's opponent on the issues and arguing that one has better policy positions and giving the reasons for them than does one's opponents, and arguing about why one's opponents have worse positions, that brings people to the polls. What turns people off, and what the research has shown, is that serious mudslinging, smear tactics, unrelentless, false, deceptive advertising, that's when people tune out, and also when people don't go to the polls. And the major study on this is actually from colleagues at Arizona State University.
Tony, let me ask you, if it's not up to government to regulate, is there a role for those in government to self-regulate, maybe?
Absolutely. I think in a political democracy like ours, it's important to recognize the baseline is self-governance. We're supposed to be responsible. And the people who are in leadership positions in particular can serve an important modeling function. And I also think that the research corroborates a sense that people do know when they're out of bounds themselves. And so it's kind of a stop and think, is this the right way for me to model the behavior? We know how to do it in the classroom. We know how to do it in courtrooms. We know how to do it in community settings. We're just asking that people call on their better angels in these other contexts as well.
And in fact, even though it is the case that at the margins there can be disagreement, was this or that particular utterance uncivil, there is widespread consensus about the core of extreme political incivility, and it doesn't depend on political partisanship. And so there's a sense that already out there in the social world, these norms are present. We need to learn to activate them.
It seems like also it steps up. Once one person goes negative and uncivil, the next person does, and it escalates.
And unnecessarily so. I think that Norm Ornstein was here and gave a lecture this fall that was fabulous. And one of his points was, we know the difference between a moment in which we should be engaged in governance versus a moment in which we're engaged in campaigning. And I think we also know the difference between campaigning around the issues, again, full-throated, full First Amendment. This is not a Miss Manners exercise we're talking about. And the kind of exchange of ideas where you learn something, you test your own position, and you can arrive at a better determination about how we ought to go forward as a population.
Now, your report, I was going to say, is 67 pages. It is lengthy, but very interesting. I read it. We're going to go ahead and post it on our website for our viewers and listeners to go and see if they'd like to read it. Thank you both so much for coming in.
Well, thanks for having us.
The annual Garlic and Onion Festival at Agua Linda Farms in Tubac is scheduled to be held this weekend, and tonight we give you a taste of the activities. It's tonight's video postcard from photographer and editor Cooper James, who visited the farm last year.
Darker as we move along. Just me and my horse and a cow's song. The last bit of sun has long since gone down. Stars are burning in the purple sky.
You can get more news and information on our website, azpm.org. To comment on any story you saw tonight, click on it online and go to the bottom. We can also be reached via Facebook and Twitter. Coming up tomorrow night, we'll hear from the mayor of Tucson about his first 180 days in office and some new plans for the city. Also, do you think former convicts should be able to vote once they've served their sentences behind bars? And local activists are arming themselves with cameras to try to share their concerns with a broader audience. I'm Tony Paniagua. From all of us at Arizona Public Media, have a great night.